Nintendo.
And I'm Sega. This is Console War!
Why is Donkey Kong wearing these VR goggles?
I said it was cool.
Not cool!
Not cool?
You can't be playing VR. Don't you know how dangerous that is?
It was either that or listening to him drum for hours. He found the djembe. Great. Now we gotta listen to beats that weren't good enough for Donkey Konga for hours.
Well, it's better than the alternative. Don't you know what VR does to monkeys?
Makes them better at hand-eye coordination?
No, you fool! It makes them smarter. It makes them want to kill. Just look at him. I bet he's planning on murdering us right now. That evil slime.
I don't see it.
Well, you would if he kept doing the VR.
Where do you come up with this stuff?
I didn't come up with it. It's common knowledge. It's also a movie called Lawnmower Man.
Never seen it. But I have mowed lawns before. And I played the video game.
Oh, I played that terrible game for the Sega Genesis.
Right. But it's worse for the Super Nintendo.
What? That's it! Are we doing this?
Does our solar system travel an average speed of 514,000 miles an hour around the galactic center? Yes!
Worst Lawnmower Man.
The Lawnmower Man is a science fiction horror film released in 1992. Even though the title comes from a Stephen King short story written in 1975, it has little to do with the source material. So little that Stephen King sued to have his name removed from the title and won. Despite poor reviews, the film was a moderate financial success. With that success came a sequel and, of course, video games.
Lawnmower Man was developed for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis in 1992 by Sales Curve Interactive. THQ published the Super Nintendo game, and Time Warner Interactive published the Sega Genesis version. These games are similar, but there are some differences. Which one's worse? Let's find out.
There's some pretty bland looking parts in these games.
The real world is pretty plain looking in both games. It's the most boring part of the game visually. Characters are fairly plain and don't have much detail. The levels are plain too, but at least there's some variety. Character animation is simple because you're either running, jumping, or shooting. Not to mention the fact that the HUDs take up a good portion of the screen, so the playing area is a bit tight.
Another bland looking section is the terminals. There's not much to see here since it's like a multiple choice IQ test. It's as bare bones as this game gets.
The VR sections of these games actually look alright.
VR worlds. Sure, it looks dated by today's standards, but it does capture what the movie did pretty well. But there's not much detail here. Plain surfaces all around. And these VR levels are constantly scrolling. It only stops when you have to shoot enemies. Then, you're able to see the very plain looking enemies. So, while these levels aren't really 3D, with the scrolling and the way walls get bigger as you approach, they pulled it off in a way where it's believable. And these games look almost identical. It's really difficult to tell which console is which.
There's another VR portion that's like a flight sim. This is probably the best looking part of each game. Again, not much detail here, but lots of flashy colors. And the constant scrolling gives it that 3D feel. Slightly different for each console, but they both look good.
And there's one more section, the boss fight. This is the most different looking section in the two games. Again, very 3D looking without actually being 3D.
Overall, these games seem to be pushing the consoles to the limit.
And a lot of similarities.
But your game definitely looks better. You got Mode 7.
Mode 7 is pretty much in play for the Super Nintendo VR levels. Look at this boss fight. The access grid rotates and even zooms in. There was nothing like that in the Sega boss battle. Explosions are different too. On Super Nintendo, you see shape manipulation of transparent semicircles. On Sega, just flames.
But those flames look so much better than shape manipulation.
But you still have Mode 7.
Come on! Your game does a great job of keeping up graphically.
Sure, there's no Mode 7 on Sega, but the scrolling on these VR levels looks very Mode 7-like. It looks just as good as the Super Nintendo, and this flight sim level looks incredible. Objects are constantly changing size. It's not Mode 7, but it's still impressive. And this boss fight? Sure, the grid doesn't change size or shape, but you know what does? The boss. For not having Mode 7, the Sega game still holds its own.
Your game didn't need Mode 7 to look good.
Fine. Even if we take Mode 7 off the menu, your game still looks better. Back to the real world. In the video game.
Look at this level on Super Nintendo. You see clouds and trees in the background. On Sega, nothing. No clouds or trees, just the blue sky. Very minimal on Sega. And on this Super Nintendo level, you can see moving blue lights in the background. On Sega, they don't move. At all. In this boss fight on Super Nintendo, you can see the background being manipulated by the heat. On Sega, no manipulation. And then there's this boss fight. On Super Nintendo, you can see a city in the background. On Sega, no city, just the window.
There's just too many details missing in the Sega game.
Oh, really? Well, Super Nintendo's missing something too.
On Sega, you see some birds here. On Super Nintendo, you don't.
That's it? Some birds?
What? It's obvious Nintendo just hates birds. From Birdo to Falco. Just jerks.
Well, my graphics definitely look worse.
While it did push the Genesis to limits in certain aspects without Mode 7, for ultimately missing details found in the Super Nintendo game, worst graphics go to Sega Genesis.
Presentation's not great in these games either.
Yeah. Let's start with the HUDs.
In the VR levels, you don't have much of a HUD. It's just your life bar. Sometimes there's no life bar. Sometimes the number of enemies killed. Sometimes there's a distance tracker. It's the bare minimum for a HUD.
And the HUD for the real world is very different.
Half the screen is HUDs on the bottom and the top. What's important is the stuff on the top. Number of lives, life bar, and if you're into it, the score and score multiplier. The bottom HUD really doesn't matter. You have all these icons. What do they mean? The manuals kind of tell you, but you'll be fine even if you don't know what those icons mean. There's a timer. It does nothing. You can't run out of time, and you don't get bonus points for beating a level faster. It's completely pointless. The most interesting part is the center. It changes a lot to supplies, people killed, Job. In the end, it's just meaningless pictures with dots for words. Again, the lower HUD just does not matter.
Such a weird choice for the HUDs.
But yours is a little better.
On Super Nintendo, when you get a power-up, it tells you. On Sega, it doesn't. Super Nintendo even tells you when you lose certain power-ups. Again, Super Nintendo just does more.
No one cares about some words.
Whoa! That's pretty cool! I wanna try that. Oh, why is that so specific?
See? Words are awful. Now let's just go to these terrible cutscenes.
Both games have terrible cutscenes. For the intro, you see stills from the movie with some text. They don't look good, but they do at least kind of set up the story. And it's better than the ending, which is just 2 pictures and 3 short sentences.
Not the most exciting cutscenes.
Not at all. But your game does have more.
The Super Nintendo game has a cutscene in the middle of the game. It's mostly text, but it progresses the story and is only on Super Nintendo.
That's a terrible cutscene. It's only 1 picture and it's from the intro.
But you still have a cutscene there. Plus, you also have this.
When you beat the boss of the game on Super Nintendo, you get a little extra scene of his death. This is not in the Sega game.
That seizure-inducing nightmare? I'd rather not have it.
Fine. Just one more thing. High score.
Here's where you enter your name for high score on Sega. It looks okay, I guess. Now check it out on Super Nintendo. Whoa, That looks a bit more like what I'd expect in a VR game. Even the way the scores are displayed just looks better on Super Nintendo.
Of all the things to talk about, you think the high score menu is going to be the thing to convince me that your game has worse presentation?
Does it?
Yes it does.
Works for me.
For no text when you get a power-up, for missing cutscenes, boring as they may be, and a more boring high score area, worst presentation goes to Sega Genesis.
Both games have the same soundtrack by Alistair Brimble.
And it's not too bad.
Your music clearly sounds better.
Are you kidding me? Your music really brings out the melody.
What? My song sounds so empty compared to yours.
Well, you have a song I don't.
That song is just a lame version of the title theme. Let's talk about your exclusive track and how much that rocks. Hard. And let's talk about the endings one more time.
Here's the music during the Super Nintendo ending and credits. Sure, it's the same as the intro, but now listen to Sega's ending. That's right, no music. It's the same with the character select.
Not only is your music better, but so are your sound effects. Mainly, the voiceovers.
Listen to when you take a hit on Super Nintendo. That's a respectable death cry. Now listen to Sega. What was that? Oh, my ears. Don't like that sound effect? Too bad, because they doubled down and use it in VR too. Here, the Super Nintendo actually uses a different groan.
What? That scream is classic. I can see that easily replacing the Wilhelm scream. Hashtag new Wilhelm.
Well, your game still has more sound effects and voiceovers than mine.
Hashtag new Wilhelm.
On Super Nintendo, the boss grunts when he attacks. Not on Sega. On Super Nintendo VR, there's just more sound effects, like when you get hit. No grunts on Sega. On Super Nintendo, when you select a character, you hear. On Sega, no voiceover. You also hear that voiceover when VR is available on Super Nintendo. Again, not on Sega.
It may not be much, but it sounds better than my game.
For missing a cool track from the Super Nintendo game, having silence where they don't need to, and having fewer voiceovers that sound awful, worst sound goes to Sega Genesis.
Gameplay is where the awfulness of these games really shines.
It's also where they're the most different. But let's start with the basics.
The real world. The main mode, I suppose. Controls are simple. One button to jump, one button to shoot, and another button for a powered-up charge shot. It plays a bit like Contra. There are different power-ups for your guns. Getting hit is pretty much instant death and you lose your weapon. Lots of CDs give you a power suit, which will let you take more than one hit and keep your weapon. But even with that, it still looks like you die when you get hit. Weird choice. The real world is also where you travel to different access points for the VR levels.
VR. There are two types. One where you're flying and you have to dodge walls or obstacles. Objective here is just stay alive till you reach the end. The other VR is the war zone. You'll still have to dodge objects, but you'll occasionally have to stop and kill these enemies known as battle chips. Kill 5 of them, move on to the next area. There's no power-ups to regenerate your life, so you gotta get through these VR levels in one shot.
The flight sim levels. Again, more flying through VR, but now you're in a plane of sorts. Again, your objective is to dodge things. You do have to shoot occasionally at certain walls and enemies. A distance meter lets you know how close you are to the end. Just survive. The name of the game is survival.
There's the Cyber Job boss fight. Again, you have to dodge and shoot. You have to shoot Job, but the key to beating him is the access panel behind him, and it plays slightly different in both games. Shoot Job enough to make him go away, and then turn all those green panels red.
There's also terminals. Like we said before, this plays like a multiple choice IQ test. It's not too difficult. It's limited to addition and match a shape. So if the objects in the top row are a small shape, choose the small one. Pretty simple. Getting 5 before time runs out gives you power-ups.
Also, both games can be played either 1 or 2 players.
Let's talk about 2 players.
Yeah, they made an interesting choice.
One playable character is Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Angelo. Makes sense. He's the guy who pretty much created the VR program. He's the one responsible for Job going full Lawnmower Man. The other playable character is Carla, the mom of the boy who's friends with Job. She doesn't really do much in the movie. She even falls asleep in the car during the climax. She doesn't quite carry that same weight of importance. It's like the main character of a Batman Begins video game being Batman and the guy who worked at the water plant. They're both in the movie, they both shouldn't be in the game.
If that pressure reaches us, the water supply right across the whole city is gonna blow.
Weird choice, but what makes these games bad is the difficulty. These games are almost impossible to get through.
Right, and the Super Nintendo version is more difficult.
First off, the Sega game has 3 difficulties to choose from. The Super Nintendo game doesn't have that option. I gotta imagine it's just on hard. Where the Super Nintendo is more difficult is the VR levels. Floating through space is difficult in both games. The Sega game's life bar depends on difficulty. The Super Nintendo doesn't have a life bar. That means you gotta go through the VR levels in one shot. Hit anything and you lose a life and have to start over. That's some cheap nonsense. One shot? The controls aren't even tight, they're just floaty. Hold the D-pad too long in one direction and you're dead. Even the hard difficulty on Sega lets you take 2 hits before dying. One shot on Super Nintendo? Ridiculous. Plus, when you die on Sega, it starts you right at the VR again. On Super Nintendo, you have to waste time in the real world and choose to enter this nightmare again.
Having a life bar does not make the Sega game easier.
Sure, there's a life bar on Sega, but the levels on Sega are longer. This is true of the Warzone levels too, where Super Nintendo does have a life bar. Plus, on Sega, the VR moves faster. Stupid blast processing. And when you hit a wall, there's no temporary invincibility. So you can lose that life bar pretty quickly. It may seem easier with a life bar, but it's not.
Are you kidding me? I'll take a life bar over no life bar any day.
That doesn't give my game any advantage.
Well, here's something the Sega does better.
Both games have a charge shot. On Sega, you can charge while still firing your gun. On Super Nintendo, you can't. Only one or the other. Charge shot or gun. Not allowed to do both. Not on Nintendo's watch.
My game's still more difficult. Let's talk about the 2-player mode.
Both games have 2-player mode. There's 2 characters you can choose from in the game. One major difference is that in Super Nintendo, both players can choose the same character. On Sega, you can only be one or the other. Look at the Super Nintendo actually letting you play as characters that matter, and not some random side character.
Evacuate the building. We're right on top of the main hub, and it's gonna blow.
What does that have to do with difficulty?
I'm getting there.
In both games, 2-player in the real world is co-op. Then in VR, it changes. In Sega, both players go. 1 player at a time, of course. For VR and Super Nintendo, only 1 person has to do it. How great is that? Pick the person who's better and they can do all the VR. Or you can go back and forth. It's up to you. For both people to have to do it on Sega is much more difficult.
It's not that difficult because you have life bars.
Fine. We've been putting this off for way too long. My game is missing levels.
Super Nintendo has levels not in the Sega game. Not sure if it was due to limitations or laziness. The Sega game is missing this whole driving section. An entire level where you're driving a vehicle and shooting at other cars with that cool song. Not in the Sega game at all. Then we have this final boss fight on Sega. On Super Nintendo, it's just the mid-boss fight. That's because there's a different final boss that is Super Nintendo exclusive. Maybe there was some limitations for Sega not including these two stages, but look at this one. The opening stage on Super Nintendo. It's a quick introduction to the real world. It's very short, and it's not in the Sega game. Instead, the Sega game starts you in VR. That VR section is the second stage on Super Nintendo.
Both games are impossible, but the Sega game missing so much makes it worse.
For having difficult VR levels despite the life bar, more difficult 2 players, and just missing major sections that are in the Super Nintendo game, worst gameplay goes to Sega Genesis.
Both games are bad, but one is worse, and that game is Lawnmower Man for the Sega Genesis.
It has worse graphics for lack of Mode 7 and missing details. It has worse presentation for missing cutscenes, no words on screen for power-ups, and less interesting high score section. It has worse sound for a boring exclusive song, and fewer and worse voiceovers. And it has worse gameplay for having fewer levels. Both games are incredibly difficult to the point of being almost unplayable. Side by side, the Sega game is incomplete. It's too bad these games are impossibly difficult because graphically, they really push their consoles to the limit. The music isn't too bad either, it's just not fun to play. Worst Lawnmower Man goes to Sega Genesis.
I told you my game was worse.
Yeah. Why did we play that game again? Donkey Kong!
Oh no, he's been wearing them the whole time. It's like video games like really distract us or something.
Would you relax? I'm sure it didn't make him any smarter and want to murder.
He's trying to talk.
No way he can talk.
Talk a little bit about what's going on with my intelligence, because I think there are some ramifications for the future.
I don't say this often. You were right.
Gentlemen, I am now smart. I've decided to use my intelligence for good. I'm going to eliminate both of you.
I don't understand.
Of course you don't. You have a low IQ, and you also like Terminator Salvation.
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't.
So now I'm going to enter my consciousness to your network through VR. From there, I'll figure out some nonsensical way to eliminate you. Toodles!
That monkey is out of control. You know what we gotta do?
Enter VR and kill him in cyberspace.
Only thing that makes sense to me.
Well, I got my goggles right here. Let's get him! Ah! Alright, kinda cool.
Ow. Ow, I keep hitting everything. Ow.
Alright.
Ow. Ow. Ow.
Oh man, this is so new. This is pretty cool.
Ow. This is so hard. Ow.
Man, this is wild.
How are you so good? Ow. Ow. Really? Ow. I think it's broken.
Alright, we made it to Donkey Kong.
But who's gonna fight him?
I'll go. You're still young.
You're only a few months older than me.
This is no time for arguing. It's settled. I'm going in. I don't know if I can do it on my own, but he's gotta be stopped at all costs. If I don't make it, there's a box under my bed. I need you to get rid of it. Don't open it. Definitely don't smell it. But just get rid of it. This is my destiny.
Hey, found another pair of VR goggles. Totally forgot we had. Now we can both take them on. What was that about a box?
Nothing. Let's go.
I wonder if I can get some congas in here. So, you two think you can beat me? Give it your best shot. That's a good attempt. Now, eat this! Why did I think bananas would work? I should have gotten lasers!
Well, we did it!
Yeah, but at what cost? Look, he's alive!
And somehow, he's back to normal!
This calls for some beers. Donkey Kong, I'm buying. That was a close one.
Sure was. You know, you should probably destroy these just to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah, good call. Well, I'll do it when we get back.
Let's have some beers first, right?
Yup.
Beers!
Thanks for checking out our latest video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon for earlier releases and bonus content. Special thanks to Xavier TheLycan for his donation of both games. If there's games you guys want to see us review, let us know in the comments. We will get to them. Also, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more console wars goodness. Later.